Welcome to lesson number 8. Let's review what we did last week. We did yarn over, knit 2 together, and here's what it should look like. It should look like eyelet lace or mesh, and you should have 4 holes. It should be a total of 8 rows, creating 4 holes going up. So here's 1, 2, 3, and 4. So that's what it's going to look like. Now, this week we're going to learn a different form of increase and a different form of decrease. So let's knit the first stitch. Now the increase we are going to do is a solid increase. In other words, it will not have a hole like the yarn over does. It's a very simple increase, and you use it a lot of times for the sleeves or the shoulders for a sweater. You can use it with some of your shawls that are solid that don't have lace work. So you do see this one fairly often. So let's start it. It is called knitting the front and the back. So you're going to get 2 stitches out of 1. So here's the next stitch. Now when you look at a stitch and you open it up here, you can see that there's a front leg here, which is the closest to you. And then behind the needle is a second. That's the back leg. So here's the front leg, back leg. You're going to knit through both of these. So your first stitch is a normal knit stitch, but you're not going to take it off the needles. So we go around, and there's that stitch transferred here, but don't move it off of the left needle. You're now going to take your needle, which is in the front, move it to the back, and you're going to go in between your front and your back leg, almost like you were going to purl, but you're going in and grabbing that back leg. I'm going to turn this so you can see it, right like that. Then you're going to wrap your yarn around that left needle or right needle and slide it over and take it off just like a regular knit stitch. You now have 2 stitches instead of 1. So that's the increase. Now the decrease is going to be slip, slip, knit, which is written as SSK in a pattern. So what you do there, you're going to take your right needle, you're going to, as if you were going to knit, you're going to just pick up the loop between the front and the back leg, slip it to your right needle, and then you're going to do the same thing to the next stitch. So you now have those 2 slipped stitches on your right side. Then you take your left needle and you're going to put it right between the hole of both stitches. Just like this. Then your yarn is in the back and it wraps around as if you were doing a knit stitch. It's similar to knitting 2 together, but it causes the stitch to slant the opposite direction. And then you just take it off like you would a regular knit stitch. So we now have down to 1 stitch. You've taken 2 to 1. So now let's do the knit front and back stitch again. So here we go, we take the right needle, we do as if we were doing a normal knit stitch, but we don't let it slide off of the left needle. So we now have a stitch here, we have a stitch here. This needle goes behind now. This right needle is going to go right behind the back leg here. So it looks like that. Wrap your thread or your yarn, and then slide it off. You now have 2 stitches in place of 1. Now let's do our decrease. Slip 1 stitch, slip 2 stitches, take the left needle and insert it between the front and the back legs of both stitches. So it looks like this. Your yarn is in the back, it wraps around, and you just act as if it's a knit stitch. And you've now taken 2 stitches down to 1. Okay, let's go back to our increase. Remember, we have to do an increase and a decrease together in order to maintain 50 stitches. Otherwise, we would have a triangle. So let's do our increase stitch. We do 1 knit stitch. Don't take it off the needles. We just hold 1 stitch here, 1 stitch here. Bring our needle to the back and pick up the back leg right there. Wrap our yarn, slip it over, and onto the right needle. Now we're going to do our decrease. We slip 1, we slip 2, we take the left needle and we put it through the 2 stitches. So you can see it right there. And then we knit the 2 together. Like I said, it's very similar to a knit 2 together that we did last week, but it causes the stitch itself to slant the opposite direction. So it's slanting this way instead of this way. And you can see it right here. You can see the little bit of a slant where it leans this direction. So let's do this a couple more times, and then we're going to go all the way across. So we knit front and back. 2 stitches are added. We slip 1, slip 2, insert our needle, knit, and now we've taken 2 stitches down to 1. So let's do that all the way across until you get to the last stitch. Now that you've knit all the way across, we have 1 stitch left, and that stitch is just going to be a knit stitch. It's now a good time to count across and make sure that you have maintained 50 stitches, that you haven't increased or decreased. And if you've got your 50 stitches, you're going to turn your work around so that you're now working on the back end or the back side or wrong side. And you could knit or purl across. In this case, we are going to knit across just for something different. So knit back across all 50 stitches. And I'm going to put up on the screen what these 2 rows would look like in a pattern. And you're going to repeat these 2 rows 3 more times. So you'll have a total of 8 rows when you're done. And that's our lesson for this week.